Henry stood at the edge of his fading farm, a solitary figure against the encroaching storm. The wind whipped through his thinning grey hair, and raindrops, heavy and relentless, pelted his weathered skin like the sorrow that had settled in his heart. At 72, he was a monument to resilience, shaped by decades of toil and loss. His hands, calloused and strong, told tales of years spent laboring under the sun. Yet now they trembled as he gripped the fence post, eyes fixed on the distant pasture where his beloved horse Stella was trapped. Stella was no ordinary horse. She was a living memory of his late wife, May. The bond between them transcended words. May had chosen Stella for her gentle spirit and spirited nature, a reflection of the love that had once filled their home. Now, in the midst of nature's fury, it was that very bond that kept Henry rooted to the spot, unwilling to abandon her to the rising waters. As the river swelled beyond its banks, he felt the icy grip of despair inch closer, squeezing his heart. "Come on, girl, hold on!" he shouted, his voice barely rising above the howling wind, a plea as much for himself as for Stella. Despite the chaos around him, he could almost hear her soft whinny responding, a sound that had always soothed his soul. But now, it was drowned out by the roar of the storm and the frantic shouts of rescuers rallying around him. "Henry!" a voice called out, urgent and frantic. It was Tom, his neighbor, fear etched on his face. "You need to get out of here. It's not safe. We can't save the horse. You can't risk your life." But Henry shook his head vehemently. "I'm not leaving her." The fire in his eyes spoke of a determination that was both noble and reckless. In that moment, the thought of abandoning Stella felt like a betrayal, an injustice he couldn't bear. "Henry, please, the flood is rising fast. We can't help you if you—" "Enough!" He cut Tom off, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. The waves, churning and frothing, seemed to echo his anguish, yet his resolve was unyielding. He could see Stella, her dark coat glistening under the rain, struggling against the debris that surrounded her. The sight broke something deep inside him, a dam of emotions that had held back his grief for too long. Before he could think twice, Henry turned toward the barn. He knew he had to act quickly. Time was slipping through his fingers like the muddy water swirling around them. With every step, he felt the ground shifting beneath him, a reminder of the peril that lay ahead. The barn, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fortress of memories as he rushed inside, searching for anything that could help him reach Stella. His heart raced as he rummaged through the clutter, thoughts of the life they had shared flooding his mind. This place was filled with echoes of laughter and love, but now it served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life. The old wooden beams creaked ominously overhead, but Henry paid them no heed. He finally spotted some discarded planks and old barrels. Using his ingenuity, he quickly crafted a makeshift raft, his hands moving with a determination that defied his age. With each nail he hammered, he could almost feel May beside him, urging him on, reminding him of the strength that had always been their cornerstone. The storm raged outside, but in that moment, the world faded away. Once the raft was complete, Henry secured it with frayed ropes and made his way back to the water's edge. The sight that greeted him was enough to steal his breath. The pasture was almost entirely submerged, with only the tips of the grass peeking through the churning waves. Stella, his steadfast companion, was still there, her powerful legs straining against the current, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Stella, I'm coming," he shouted, his voice breaking through the cacophony of the storm. As he pushed the raft into the water, he felt the icy bite of fear. Yet the thought of leaving her behind was unbearable. The floodwaters swirled around him, cold and unforgiving, but he steadied himself. With one last glance at the shore, he climbed onto the raft, praying that it would hold against the unforgiving current. The makeshift vessel bobbed precariously, and for a split second, doubt clawed at his heart. But then he saw Stella again, and all uncertainty vanished. The raft drifted into the debris-laden water, the current pulling him closer to his goal, and he paddled. With all the strength he could muster, Each stroke felt like a battle against the storm, against the very forces of nature, trying to tear him away from what mattered most. As he drew nearer, he could see the panic in Stella's eyes, reflected in the flashing lightning above. She was trapped, and he was her only hope. Just as he reached out to her, a sudden surge of water crashed against the raft, throwing him off balance. "Hold on, Stella! I'm almost there!" he yelled, but the current had other plans. An unexpected wave rocked the raft violently, sending Henry tumbling into the icy abyss. The shock of the cold water took his breath away, and in that instant he felt the grip of panic. But even as he struggled to resurface, something extraordinary happened. Stella, sensing his distress, instinctively lunged toward him. The powerful mare, despite her own precarious situation, fought against the floodwaters, and with a strength that seemed to defy nature, she reached him. As Henry floundered, he felt her nuzzle against him, guiding him back toward the raft. In that moment, their connection transcended words. It was a testament to the unbreakable bond they shared. He clung to her, and together they found their way back onto the makeshift raft, breathless yet alive. Just as they settled back onto the raft, the storm began to relent, the torrential rain easing into a drizzle. But Henry knew they weren't out of danger yet. The exhaustion from the struggle was creeping in, threatening to pull him under. As he looked at Stella, her deep brown eyes radiating a mixture of fear and trust, he felt a surge of love that fueled his determination. They would make it. They had to. But as the adrenaline wore off, he felt himself growing faint, the world around him beginning to blur. The moment of safety was fleeting as darkness began to close in. Just as he slumped against Stella's warm side, he heard the distant sound of voices and the rushing of footsteps. "Henry! Stella!" The voice called out, a beacon of hope piercing through his haze. In that instant, he knew their love had brought them to the brink of survival, and he held on, hoping against hope that they would make it through together, bound by an unshakable spirit that refused to surrender. The rain continued to fall, a gentle patter that was almost soothing compared to the earlier onslaught. Henry blinked away the fatigue that threatened to pull him into unconsciousness. He could feel the warmth radiating from Stella, her powerful body a lifeline in the cold, wet darkness. He focused on her, drawing strength from her presence, reminding himself that they were in this together. "Stay with me, girl," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. But the warmth of her breath against him sparked a flicker of hope. The distant voices grew louder, and he strained to hear through the haze of exhaustion. "Over here! We found them!" A group of rescuers appeared, silhouetted against the dim light of the clearing storm. Henry's heart raced as he recognized Tom among them, his face a mask of relief. The sight of his neighbor, normally so stoic, brought a tear to Henry's eye. There was a momentary silence as Tom took in the sight of Henry and Stella, both soaked and shivering but alive. "Thank God," Tom breathed, rushing forward. "I thought we'd lost you both." With assistance from the other rescuers, they maneuvered the raft back toward the shore. The current still strong but manageable now that the storm had eased. Henry felt Stella shift beneath him, her powerful legs moving with a sense of purpose as she sensed safety was near. The moment they reached solid ground, Henry staggered off the raft, his legs trembling beneath him. Tom and another rescuer, a younger man with an unwavering determination, helped Henry to his feet, and he leaned heavily on them. "We need to get you both warm," Tom said urgently, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "You're lucky to be alive. The river was rising fast, and we couldn't get to you in time." Henry looked back at Stella, who had also found her footing, her coat matted and heavy with rain, but her spirit unbroken. He reached out to stroke her neck, feeling her warmth beneath the dampness. "She saved me," he said hoarsely, his voice cracking with emotion. "She always has." The rescuers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of admiration and disbelief. "It's incredible," the younger man said, shaking his head. "Horses have a way of sensing danger. They're smarter than people think." Henry nodded, his heart swelling with pride for Stella. The bond they shared had been tested in the most harrowing of ways, and they had come through, not just as a man and his horse, but as partners bound by love and loyalty. "Let's get you both to the barn," Tom suggested, leading the way. "We can dry you off and get some blankets." The journey back felt like a blur, the adrenaline from the rescue slowly dissipating, leaving a chilling exhaustion in its wake. As they entered the barn, warm air enveloped them, a comforting embrace that felt like home. Inside, the familiar scent of hay and wood soothed Henry's frayed nerves. The barn had always been a sanctuary, filled with memories of May and the life they had built together. Now it stood as a testament to endurance, a place where he and Stella could heal. Tom gestured for Henry to sit on a nearby hay bale. "I'll grab some blankets," he said, rushing to a storage area at the back of the barn. Henry sank onto the bale, feeling the weight of the day settle upon him. He watched as Stella stood quietly, her eyes scanning the barn as though seeking reassurance that they were safe. "Good girl," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "We made it." As Tom returned with a stack of warm blankets, Henry took one and began to wrap it around Stella's shivering form. "You deserve this," he said, his hands working methodically. The blanket enveloped her, and she nickered, softly, as if to thank him. "Henry, you need to take care of yourself too," Tom urged, tossing a blanket over Henry's shoulders. "You're soaked and freezing. We need to get you warmed up." The warmth of the blanket seeped into his bones, and he felt the tension in his body begin to ease. "I'm all right," he insisted, though his voice betrayed him. "Stella needs me. Trust me, she'll be fine for a moment," Tom replied, his tone firm but kind. "You're no good to her if you collapse from exhaustion." Henry relented, allowing Tom to guide him toward a small space where he could sit and rest. The barn was filled with the gentle sounds of the storm fading outside, replaced by the soft whinny of Stella and the rustle of hay. It was a familiar symphony that he had always cherished, yet today it felt even more poignant. As he sat, he reflected on the bond he shared with his horse, the unyielding connection that had pulled them through the chaos. He thought of May, of the life they had built together, and how Stella was a living piece of her memory. "I owe you everything," he whispered to Stella, who had settled beside him, her warmth a comforting presence. Suddenly, a shiver ran through his body, and he realized how close he had come to losing everything. The thought gripped him like a vice, but as he looked into Stella's gentle eyes, he felt a spark of hope ignite within him. "Together, we'll get through this," he promised, not just to her, but to himself. "We've faced storms before, and we'll face many more. We just have to hold on." Tom returned carrying a thermos of hot coffee and some sandwiches. "Here, this should help," he said, handing a cup to Henry. "You need to eat and drink something warm." With shaking hands, Henry accepted the thermos and took a sip, the warmth spreading through him like a comforting embrace. "Thank you, Tom," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Don't mention it," Tom replied, his expression softening. "You scared us all. Today, I can't believe you went out there." "I couldn't just stand by and watch her suffer," Henry said, his voice steadying with resolve. "Stella is family." "Family," Tom echoed, nodding thoughtfully. "That's what it's all about, isn't it? The lengths we go to for those we love." Henry felt a swell of pride, not just for his actions, but for the community that had rallied around him. The bond of the rural town was strong, forged through years of trials and triumphs. "We're lucky to have each other," he said quietly. "In the end, it's all that matters." As the storm continued to recede, the barn filled with light, illuminating the hard work and memories that lined its walls. Henry knew there would be challenges ahead. The flood had caused damage, but with Stella by his side and the support of his community, he felt ready to face whatever came next. "Let's make a plan," Tom suggested, his eyes brightening with determination. "We can work together to clean up the land and repair any damage. You won't have to do this alone." Henry nodded, a sense of purpose washing over him. "Together, we'll rebuild." As they discussed their next steps, Henry glanced at Stella, who appeared calmer now, her dark eyes reflecting trust and loyalty. "We'll get through this, girl," he reassured her, feeling the weight of the day begin to lift. The bond they shared had been tested, but it had only grown stronger. Just then, a thought struck him, and he turned to Tom, a smile creeping onto his face. "You know, we should invite the whole town for a barbecue once things settle down, a celebration of sorts." Tom chuckled, the sound brightening the mood in the barn. "I like that idea. A chance to come together, share stories, and remind ourselves of what matters." And as they continued to plan, the storm clouds outside began to dissipate, revealing a brilliant sunset that painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. It felt like a promise of better days ahead, a reminder that even after the darkest storms, light would always return. "Let's do this," Henry said, feeling a renewed sense of strength for Stella and for all of us. In that moment, surrounded by friendship, love, and the resilient spirit of the community, he knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. And with each passing second, the bond he shared with Stella deepened, intertwining their destinies in a way that only true love can. As he looked into the horizon, the last rays of sunlight glimmering through the barn's open door, Henry felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life was fragile, but it was also beautiful, filled with love and connection, and he was ready to embrace it all. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to comment from where you are hearing this amazing story. As the warmth of the setting sun bathed the barn in golden light, the atmosphere shifted from one of despair to hope. Henry, now invigorated by the support of his neighbor and the promise of community, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The flood may have threatened to wash away everything he held dear, but it had also revealed the strength of the bonds he had cultivated over the years. "Let's get started," Tom said, clapping his hands together, the sound echoing off the barn walls. "First things first, we need to check the fences and see how much damage the flood caused." Henry nodded, the weight of responsibility resting heavily on his shoulders, yet he felt lighter with the prospect of working alongside friends. "You're right. We can't let the livestock wander off. They're as much a part of this place as Stella." The two men stepped outside, and Henry took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs. The storm had left remnants in its wake. Fallen branches and debris littered the ground, but the sight of his farm standing resolute brought a swell of pride. He turned to Stella, who stood patiently by the barn door, her coat now starting to dry, glistening under the fading sun. "All right, girl, let's see what we're up against," Henry said, motioning for her to follow. The horse stepped forward, her spirit unbroken even after the harrowing ordeal. Together, they walked toward the perimeter of the property, Tom beside them. As they moved, the reality of the flood's impact began to set in. The river had surged high, leaving behind muddy banks and a few scattered remnants of what had once been lush green grass. "Looks like we'll have to repair a lot of the fencing," Tom said, surveying the damage. "Yep, and I'll need some new hay bales," Henry added, frustration creeping into his voice. "We lost a fair amount. Don't worry about that. We can put a call out for help. I'm sure the whole town will pitch in," Tom reassured him, his tone optimistic. "Everyone knows how much you love this place and how hard you've worked to keep it going." Henry felt a warmth spread through him at Tom's words. It was true. This farm was not just land to him. It was a legacy, a testament to a life lived with love, laughter, and hard work. "Thank you, Tom," he said earnestly. "I appreciate it more than you know." As they continued to walk, Henry's thoughts drifted back to May. He could almost hear her laughter, envisioning her in the fields, tending to the animals and planting seeds of kindness in everyone they met. This was their dream, and he would fight with every ounce of strength to preserve it. "Henry, look!" Tom suddenly called out, pointing toward a section of the fence where the wood had splintered and fallen. "We'll need to start here. It's pretty bad." Henry nodded, a sense of urgency rising within him. "Let's get to work." The three of them, Henry, Tom, and Stella, began the task of clearing the debris and assessing the damage. Stella, ever his faithful companion, stayed by Henry's side, her presence a constant reminder of the bond they shared. As they worked, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the land, yet the air was filled with laughter and camaraderie. With each nail driven into the wood and each fence post replaced, Henry felt the weight of despair lifting. They shared stories of past storms and the lessons learned, each anecdote a reminder of resilience. "Remember that storm back in '98? Tom chuckled. "We thought we were going to lose the entire barn, but we managed to save it with a few extra hands." "Yeah, and I thought I could outsmart the weather," Henry replied with a grin. "I tried to build a makeshift roof out of tarps, but it didn't hold up for long." "Nothing ever does when it comes to Mother Nature," Tom said, shaking his head. "But you know what? We'll get through this too, together." As they worked late into the evening, Henry felt a sense of unity enveloping them. The community spirit was alive and vibrant, a force that could not be easily extinguished. He thought about how many lives had been touched by his farm, neighbors who had shared meals, children who had played in the fields, and friends who had come together in times of need. When they finally took a break to catch their breath, Henry leaned against a fence post, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You know, I couldn't have done this without you, Tom. Seeing everyone rally together today reminds me of what truly matters." Tom smiled, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "You've always been there for us, Henry. We're just returning the favor." As the sun finally set, painting the sky in vibrant hues of purple and gold, Henry felt a sense of peace wash over him. The storm had come and gone, but it had also brought clarity. The love he felt for Stella, for May, and for the land they had shared was more potent than any flood could wash away. Just then, they heard the distant sound of voices approaching. "Looks like more help is on the way," Tom said, glancing toward the road. Henry turned to see a group of neighbors walking up the path, carrying tools, food, and supplies. "We heard you were in need," one of them called out, a wide smile on her face. "Thought we'd lend a hand." The sight brought tears to Henry's eyes. "Thank you. We truly appreciate it." As they gathered together, the sense of community grew stronger. Laughter and chatter filled the air as more people arrived, bringing not just tools, but also a sense of solidarity. They shared stories of their own experiences with the storm, each tale a thread woven into the fabric of their community. Stella, now fully dried off and regaining her strength, stood proudly among them, her head held high, as if understanding the role she played in this gathering of friends and neighbors. Henry stepped closer to her, running his hand along her flank and whispering words of encouragement. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the help, but for the love that surrounded them. As the night deepened, the group began to organize themselves, planning the work ahead. "Let's split into teams," Tom suggested. "Some of us can focus on the fences, while others can help clear the debris from the fields." Henry watched as the community came alive with purpose, each person taking on a role, working toward a common goal. He felt a surge of pride for the land they had cultivated and for the people who had become family over the years. As he joined a group working on the fences, he felt Stella at his side, the quiet strength of their bond fueling his resolve. They were a team, and together they would overcome the aftermath of the storm. Hours passed, and they worked tirelessly, the energy of the group unwavering. The laughter and encouragement echoed in the cool night air, creating a rhythm of hard work and camaraderie. Finally, as the stars began to twinkle above, signaling the end of a long day, Tom called for a break. "Let's gather around and celebrate what we've accomplished so far," he said, his voice rising above the chatter. They all gathered around a makeshift table filled with food and drinks brought by those who had come to help. The warmth of the gathering filled Henry's heart, the sense of community palpable. "Here's to Henry and Stella," Tom declared, raising his glass. "For their courage and determination, you both inspire us all." Cheers erupted, and Henry felt a wave of emotion wash over him. "Thank you, everyone. I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice trembling. "Stella and I are grateful for every one of you. This farm is as much yours as it is mine." As they shared stories and laughter, Henry felt the darkness from earlier in the day begin to fade. The floodwaters had tested their strength, but they had emerged united, bound by love, loss, and an unbreakable spirit. And as the night wore on, surrounded by friends, family, and the warm glow of lanterns, he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The storm had come and gone, but the bonds forged in its wake would last a lifetime. In the days that followed, the work continued, but so did the spirit of togetherness. Neighbors came and went, each contributing their time and effort to help restore the farm. They replaced the damaged fences, cleared the debris, and fixed what the storm had taken. Henry and Stella were never alone in their labor. The community rallied around them, providing not just physical support, but emotional strength. The shared meals, laughter, and stories became a healing balm for all who had been affected by the storm. With each passing day, the farm began to regain its vitality. The fields, once ravaged by rising waters, started to show signs of renewal, and the laughter of children echoed again in the pastures as they played with Stella. Henry spent every moment he could with her, riding through the fields and enjoying the beauty of the land he had fought to protect. The bond between them had only deepened. They had faced the storm together, and that had changed everything. One afternoon, as Henry watched, the sun sink low on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant colors, he felt a deep sense of peace. The fields, once again lush and green, were a testament to resilience. The air was filled with the sweet scent of grass and the soft sounds of nature coming alive as the day transitioned into night. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Henry took a moment to reflect on the journey they had taken together, he and Stella, and the entire community that had come to their aid. "Look at you, girl," he said softly, stroking Stella's neck as she grazed contentedly beside him. "We made it through the storm, didn't we?" She raised her head, her eyes locking onto his, and he felt an unspoken understanding pass between them. She was more than just a horse. She was a living piece of his history, a reminder of love, loss, and the strength that comes from facing adversity head-on. The memories of the flood still lingered in the back of his mind, but with each day that passed, the pain transformed into something more akin to gratitude. Gratitude for the friends who stood by him, for the neighbors who had shown up without hesitation, and for the lessons learned in the face of danger. The storm had not only threatened to take away his home, but had also revealed the depth of connection he had with those around him. As night fell, he led Stella back to the barn, where the warm glow of lanterns illuminated the space, casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls. The barn, once a sanctuary of solitude, now buzzed with newfound life as friends and neighbors gathered to share a meal. Henry could hear the laughter spilling out, the clinking of glasses, and the chatter of voices, all blending into a comforting symphony that warmed his heart. "Henry, come join us," called out Lily, one of the local farmers, her cheerful voice cutting through the evening air. She waved him over, her smile infectious. "We've been waiting for you to tell the story of your heroic rescue." Henry chuckled, feeling a mix of embarrassment and pride. He had never viewed his actions as particularly heroic. He had simply done what he felt was right. But as he stepped into the barn, he could see the admiration in their eyes, the way they sought to celebrate the bond he shared with Stella. It was a reminder of the unbreakable ties that tethered them all together. All right, he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "But if I'm telling the story, you all have to promise to share your own. Tales of bravery too." This elicited a chorus of laughter and cheers as he made his way to the makeshift table where platters of food awaited. As he settled in, surrounded by familiar faces, he began recounting the harrowing day of the flood. His words painted a vivid picture of the storm's fury, the rising waters, and his relentless determination to save Stella. With every detail, the room hung on his every word, their expressions shifting from concern to admiration as he described the moment. He had fallen into the water and Stella's instinctive drive to rescue him. Just when I thought it was all over, she pulled me back, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I couldn't have done it without her. The room erupted into applause, and Henry felt a warm flush spread across his cheeks. You all know it wasn't just me, it was everyone who came together that day. We're a community, and together we can weather any storm. Tom raised his glass, a broad smile on his face. To Henry and Stella, to the bond of friendship and family that brings us all together. The cheers resonated around the barn, and as glasses clinked, Henry felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. It was more than just a celebration of survival. It was a celebration of love, resilience, and the understanding that they were never alone in their struggles. As the evening wore on, stories flowed freely. Each person took a turn sharing their experiences with the storm, how they had banded together, helped one another, and the lessons learned in the aftermath. The sense of camaraderie enveloped them, and laughter echoed off the barn walls, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences that bound them closer together. Lily recounted how her family had rallied to help each other, sharing food and supplies, even when their own homes had been threatened. It's amazing how quickly people step up when it really matters, she said, her eyes shining with pride. A farmer named Joe shared how he had lost a few fence posts, but gained a newfound appreciation for his neighbors. I realized that I've been so focused on my own little world that I forgot the strength we have when we come together. I won't make that mistake again. Henry listened intently, feeling the warmth of their stories seep into his heart. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, light could be found in the collective spirit of those around him. As the night continued, the atmosphere shifted from one of reflection to celebration. Music began to fill the air, and soon people were dancing, their laughter mingling with the sounds of joy. Henry watched as Stella, content in the corner of the barn, seemed to enjoy the festivities as much as everyone else. "Come on, Henry, join us," Tom called out, pulling him from his reverie. With a grin, Henry stood, letting the rhythm of the music take over. He found himself swept into the dance, surrounded by friends and neighbors who embodied the very spirit of resilience and joy. As he twirled and moved, he felt the burdens of the past few days begin to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and unity. The night deepened, filled with laughter, dancing, and stories of friendship. Henry stole glances at Stella, who seemed to bask in the joy radiating from the gathering. It was as if she understood how special this moment was, how far they had come together. Eventually, as the evening began to wind down, Henry found a quiet moment to step outside. The stars twinkled brightly overhead, and the air was crisp and refreshing. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle within him. "Thank you, May," he whispered into the night, feeling her presence as if she were beside him. "I know you would be proud." Just then, Stella stepped out of the barn, her hooves softly padding against the earth. She walked over to him, her warm breath visible in the cool night air. "You're my partner, girl," he said, wrapping his arms around her neck. "We made it, didn't we?" Stella nickered softly, and in that moment, Henry realized that they were more than just a man and his horse. They were a symbol of love, loyalty, and the incredible strength that comes from standing together against life's storms. As the last of the festivities faded, Henry returned to the barn where the warmth of friendship lingered in the air. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but he felt ready to face them, not just for himself, but for the community that had come together to support him. Together, they would rebuild, not just the fences and the fields, but the very fabric of their shared lives. And as he looked at Stella, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had weathered the storm, and now they would thrive, bound by love and the unbreakable ties of family, both human and animal. The dawn of a new day awaited them, filled with hope and new beginnings, and Henry was ready to embrace every moment. Together, they would forge ahead, hand in hoof, into whatever lay on the horizon. As the last of the festivities faded, Henry returned to the barn, where the warmth of friendship lingered in the air. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but he felt ready to face them, not just for himself, but for the community that had come together to support him. Together, they would rebuild, not just the fences and the fields, but the very fabric of their shared lives. And as he looked at Stella, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had weathered the storm, and now they would thrive, bound by love and the unbreakable ties of family, both human and animal. The dawn of a new day awaited them, filled with hope and new beginnings, and Henry was ready to embrace every moment. Together, they would forge ahead, hand in hoof, into whatever lay on the horizon. As the sun rose the next morning, casting a golden glow over the landscape, Henry stepped outside to take in the beauty of the day. The air was crisp and fresh, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous days. He felt a sense of calm wash over him as he surveyed the farm, now illuminated by the morning light. "Today's a new day, Stella," he said, glancing at his loyal companion, who stood beside him, her coat gleaming in the sun. "Let's get to work." With renewed energy, they set off to inspect the damage. The fields were still muddy, remnants of the storm clinging to the earth, but Henry saw promise in the way the land breathed under the morning sun. He knew the resilience of nature. It could heal, just as he and Stella had. As they walked, he couldn't help but smile at the sight of their neighbors already beginning to gather. It seemed everyone had returned, ready to lend a hand once more. The spirit of unity was palpable, a force that would drive their recovery. "Henry!" Tom called out, waving as he approached with a group of friends. "We brought tools and supplies. Let's tackle those fences first." Henry felt a swell of gratitude as they set to work, each member of the community taking on roles according to their strengths. Laughter mingled with the sounds of hammers and saws, creating a harmonious symphony that echoed across the farm. Throughout the day, they repaired the fences, cleared debris, and worked tirelessly, the sun rising high in the sky. Henry felt a sense of fulfillment with every nail driven and every post replaced. He shared stories and memories with his neighbors, reflecting on the bonds that had formed and strengthened through shared adversity. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, Henry took a moment to step back and appreciate the progress they had made. The fences stood strong, and the fields were starting to show signs of recovery. "Look at what we've accomplished," he said, addressing the group, pride swelling in his chest. "This is what community looks like. Together, we can overcome anything." Cheers erupted around him, and he felt a deep sense of belonging. The hardships of the flood had brought them closer, revealing the strength of their ties. That evening, as they gathered once more in the barn, Henry encouraged everyone to share their thoughts and stories. "We should celebrate our hard work and the bonds we've forged," he suggested. With enthusiasm, the group set about preparing a meal, laughter and chatter filling the air as they cooked and shared. Henry watched as Stella mingled among them, accepting gentle pats and treats from the children who had come to help. Each interaction was a reminder of the love that had flourished amidst adversity. As dusk fell and the barn was adorned with lanterns, the atmosphere transformed into one of joy and gratitude. They feasted on the fruits of their labor, each bite a celebration of resilience. "Henry, you should tell us more about that day in the storm," one of the neighbors urged, leaning forward with interest. With a smile, Henry recounted the story again, embellishing it with the camaraderie and spirit that had emerged since. The laughter that followed echoed throughout the barn, a testament to their shared journey and the strength they had discovered together. As the night deepened, they continued to share stories, each person contributing their unique experiences. The warmth of the gathering enveloped them, and Henry felt a profound sense of peace settle within him. In those moments of shared joy, he realized that life, despite its challenges, was filled with beauty and connection. The flood had threatened to take away everything he held dear, but instead it had revealed the strength of community, love, and the enduring bond between a man and his horse. As the evening wound down, Henry stood outside the barn, gazing up at the stars. He felt a deep connection to the land, to May, and to everyone who had joined him on this journey. The weight of the past had shifted, replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. "Together, we'll face whatever comes next," he said softly, feeling Stella's warm presence beside him as they stood under the vast sky. And as the stars twinkled brightly above, he knew that no matter what storms lay ahead, he would never face them alone. Together, they would embrace each new day, hand in hoof, ready to forge a path toward a brighter future.